let's make some books. So regular viewers will know that I've recently got into bookbinding. I've had a bit of a dabble with Western style case-bound books. I've done a bit of Coptic stitch. I've done a book with an embroidered cover. So dabbling here, there and everywhere. And I've also been investigating Japanese style stab stitch bindings. Now the husband noticed because, yeah, let's flip the camera around and I'll show you what he got me for our paper wedding anniversary. Okay, so I'm going to do a bit of bookbinding today using this kit. This is part of the anniversary present I got from my husband, first year being paper. He also got me this book, so Japanese bookbinding. So the kit is also a Japanese style binding. I have already opened it, had a look at see what's inside it, and I've read some of this book as well. I've read all sort of the information-y bits, and then the rest is how-tos. This book is written by a Japanese bookbinder. It's a reprint, I believe. It's translated from the Japanese into the English. I like that the slipcover has been given at least a representation of Japanese binding, Japanese stab stitch binding in particular. So yeah, so this is more about traditional Japanese bookbinding. This kit, from looking through the instructions for it, seems to me to be, from my understanding so far, it seems to be a bit of a blend between Western and Japanese styles, so not a traditional Japanese bookbinding. So put those to one side at the moment. This is a Japanese stab stitch style book that I've already made. So this one I used just loose leaf paper, and this is the kanshi, I think that's how you say it, style of binding. So it's named after a Chinese emperor. As I understand it, from the information I've got from the book, things like paper crafts and bookbinding and that kind of thing, so making paper, making books, came from China to Japan. So it's no real surprise that there's a style that's named after a Chinese emperor. This is a 4-hole binding, or based on the 4-hole binding. Has a couple of extra holes for the corner pieces. The kit gives the instructions for just the plain 4-hole binding, so sort of ignore these corner bits. And as I understand it, Chinese bookbinding uses 4 holes because even numbers are good in Chinese. Korean bookbinding uses 5 holes because odd numbers are good in Korean. And Japan, they use both. So yeah, so this is my version based on some YouTube videos of an attempt at a Japanese stab stitch binding. So it gives you sort of an idea of what we're aiming for. So this kit, I just scoot the instructions out the way. It's got the instructions for how to do the stitching, so it's got seam stitches on the front which are not called for in the instructions to this kit. And it's got Japanese style there, so they clearly do the same sticker on the front of their boxes for the different kits that they do, because you wouldn't have both on them otherwise. Inside the instructions runs like a sheet of A4, and then you've got all the bits and pieces, bar a pair of scissors that you need. You might use scissors to cut the thread and the tape. So it comes with embroidery floss for the stab stitch binding. It comes with tape because this is the book instruction for the book in this kit uses tape on the spine. Got a couple of bone folders. I think these are a plastic rather than actual bone. A glue stick, some needles and drawing pins for the sewing and what have you. There's quite a few needles in there actually, that's pretty good. So I think technically for the style of binding they do, you'd only need one, so having multiples is nice. Yeah, craft knife. I do have other craft knives upstairs, but having an extra one is quite handy. This is a nice little small one. It's got a little thing on there as well, so you can hook it into things. Oh, and the end is pointing out of it. That's not great. So put that away. Then we've got a plastic ruler. I have metal ones upstairs that I use for my other bookbinding. We'll give it a go with a plastic one for this one, but you can obviously cut plastic with sharp knives, so metal would be better. A couple of bulldog clips to hold things in place. Some pretty papers for the covers. So this is 12 sheets and they've got 12 different designs shown on the front, so probably going to need a different colour for the front and the back because we're looking at A6 style, like A6 size when we've got the book finished. We've got a whole stack of paper here. So this is A5 paper and that's going to be folded in half, so that's going to give us an A6 style book. Okay, so we're having a little bit of a go. As I say, I have already read through the instructions, so I do have a bit of an idea as to what I'm doing. The first step in the instructions for the kit is to fold 8 pieces of paper in half, and you do that 3 times, so you're effectively making 3 signatures. So that's, to my mind, a very sort of Western way of doing books, to have the signatures with the fold at the spine of the book. Traditional Japanese books, as I understand it, you fold the sheets individually and the fold is on the foredge of the book rather than the spine, so the open edge is at the spine. That I think is to do with how they made their paper. So when you dry Japanese paper, when you make it, ends up with a smooth side and a rough side. So you fold it in half with the rough side on the inside, so you've got the smooth surface for writing on. Obviously doing it the way that these instructions have it, you're going to end up with more pages than if you did the fold on the outside. So it says 3. I might do a few more, we'll see. So we're going to do that first. Nice and simple, same as I've done for Western style bookbinding. And it's going to be folded this way. I'm just demonstrating with the one sheet there. So it folds nice and easily that way around. If I was to fold it this way, it's a bit stiffer that way. And it's also going to give a really weird shaped book. But this is cross grain, this is with the grain. So the grain on this paper is running this way. The reason I know that is because it is much easier to fold it that way. And it's stiffer folding it that way. Folding along the grain is easier. With Japanese handmade paper, as I understand it, you can see the grain when you hold the paper up to the light because of the way that it's made. This is just like, kind of like printed paper, just in A5 size. So I'm going to get on and fold up these pages, and I'll come back to you when that is done, ready for the next step. Okay, so I've folded up all of the paper bar one single sheet. So that's given me 8 little bundles. I mean, reading the instructions a bit more closely, it gives you instructions to do 1 and then to repeat 3 times. So I think it's looking at 4, which means I've got enough to do 2 books following the instructions that they give you, which is not bad. There's obviously going to be spare cover papers as well because we've got 12 sheets in that little pack. I have managed to find 2 sets of coordinating papers. They're not the same, but they do at least go. So I've got this sort of turquoisey pink pair, and I've got this purpley pair as well. So these are going to be my covers. So the first thing to do is to cut the covers down to size. So we're looking at A6. I'm going to keep hold of one set of my signatures, and I'm going to use that as a template to measure out the size that I need. I'm just using the lines on my cutting board just to line things up. Do I want the blues or do I want the purples? I think I want the purples. So I'll do it that way around. Why do I do it that way? It's got both. I'll do it that way. I'm going to line the signature up on top. For the style of binding that we're doing, you actually want the head and foot of the book, so the top and the bottom, to line up with the paper of the cover. Not so concerned about the foredge if the cover sticks out a little bit there, so I think what I might do is trim down the pages of the text block at a later point to give that a neater edge, but we'll see. Yeah, so line that up nice and neatly along the bottom, and then unbury the craft knife. Let's get the blade out. So I'm just going to run the blade down the edge of the pages. I mean, you can see I'm taking this tiny little sliver off the pages there, so yeah, I will probably need to trim them off, but that's okay because then I'll have a nice little neat edge as well to the book. And then we're going to trim across the top as well. Okay, so that's one of my covers ready. So I need to do the other cover and go from there. I may not need to trim down the text block because that's looking quite neat. I don't want too much of an overhang because it's a paper cover rather than a card. But yeah, that's looking quite neat and tidy there. Okay, so I'll put that one to one side and do the papers for the other set. Okay, so that's both books ready to go with their 4 bundles of pages and their front and back cover. Now the instructions have you sorting out the spine next and connecting the page blocks together and then piercing the holes afterwards for the stab stitch binding. I'm going to reverse that. The reason being, I know it can be quite hard to get through multiple pages at a time. So I have a Japanese spiral hole punch with different sized tips that I've brought down. This is not in the kit, but it is something I have invested in. You can use an awl if you've got one, or you can use a needle to punch the holes, that's fine. But I know this will only go through a few pages at once, and I know it'll be quite hard to get a needle through too many pages at once to punch a hole. So I am going to do each set of pages at a time and the front and back cover at a time. I'm going to put a smaller punch, I think, on the end because I've got multiple sized punches. So that's what I'm going to do. But before I do that, I'm going to do some measuring and work out the distance between the holes and create myself a bit of a template on one of the bits of scrap paper. Probably the sheet that didn't go into the pages, so that I can put the holes in the same place on each section of the book, so that they then line up properly at the end. So yeah, so that's my plan. I'm going to do that off camera, or at least the measuring and calculating off camera, and I'll come back when I'm ready to move on to the next step. So yeah, so I am deviating slightly from the instructions, just because it makes more sense to me to do it this way round, rather than trying to punch through multiple pages, like the whole book at once. So yeah, I mean, otherwise the instructions are fine. The picture on the front of the book of the how to do the stitching is a little bit small. But yeah, the instructions are pretty clear, and there are photo instructions, so you can see what they're intending for you to do the whole way through. Okay, so I'll come back to you in a bit when I'm ready for the next stage. Okay, so I've sorted out my template, so I've measured the height of the page and divided it by 5, because with 4 holes you end up with 5 sections. And I've marked horizontal lines at those points, and the instructions don't actually tell you sizings and spacings for the holes or how far to put them in or anything. I've gone with 12mm for this A6 booklet, so I've done a line at 12mm in, and I'm going to punch holes where the lines intersect. I did consider doing some of the more elaborate styles of stab stitch binding that I've got referenced in my book, but I think with the style of cover papers that may be a bit much, particularly at this scale. So we're going to start by punching holes in the cover papers. Hopefully I'll be able to get through all 4 of these at once. So we're going to line them up all in a neat pile, and then we're going to line the template over the top. I may need to do these as separate, so 2 and 2, but we'll see. So if you're going to be doing a reasonable amount of bookbinding, particularly Japanese stab stitch binding, not so much the Western style, but Japanese stab stitch binding or embroidery on paper, I would recommend one of these Japanese hole punches. And you can get single hole punches in other places, but these ones are definitely worth it for this type of thing. So it's taking 2 goes to get through most of the way, I think. Yeah, I needed to do that in 2 batches. Okay, so we've got 1 punched all the way through. I'll pop out the bits that are left behind with a needle in a bit. So let's line it up again to sort out the other sets. As with any method of hole punching, going through multiple pages is going to get more difficult. Okay, so has that gone through? Yeah, that's done, that one. You do end up with little discs of paper all over the place with this hole punch, but I mean, that's okay. So that's my covers punched and ready. I'm going to do the same to all the pages, but obviously with them being so thick, I am probably going to need to separate out the bundles of pages to do that. So I'll do that off camera, and at least you'll see how it works. And I'll come back to you when we're ready to assemble the book. Okay, so I've put all my holes in my various bits of paper, and I've just done the next step on the first book. So you should cut little bits of the tape and glue them to the top and bottom of the text block along the spine. And this is more in keeping with the sewn bindings that I've done for Western style books, and sometimes they're reinforced with tape. So yes, it's a reinforcement. My understanding from the book is that typically with traditional Japanese bookbinding you'd be using twisted paper to do some internal stitching, sort of about here-ish, so inside where the holes are for the external binding, as like a insurance measure for keeping everything together. Whereas more modern Japanese bookbinders, some of them are using paste along the spine like you would in a case-bound Western book. So this seems to be sort of leaning more towards the more modern, and yeah, as I say, blending in the Western with the Japanese a little bit. So these have been glued on just using glue stick that came in the kit. And yeah, they're just there as a reinforcement. The main binding is going to be the stitching that's going to go on in a bit. So I'm going to put that to one side with its relevant cover papers. I'm going to take the bulldog clips off actually, because I'm going to need them for the other book. Okay, so I've got my cover papers for the other book, put that to one side. I've got all my holes punched through. And there's a couple that I just need to poke out with the needle just to make sure that we've got access all the way through. So I'm doing this before I stick them together so that I don't have any issues when I actually come to do the sewing. I have like one blocked in the middle or something, because that would be annoying. Okay. So we'll line these back up. There's one there that needs doing. There we go. Get them all nicely lined up. I'm just going to make sure that I can see through at least a little bit with all of these holes. And then I'm going to clip them together, just because I could do with a third hand, and the bulldog clips provide that for me. Okay, so because we've got the 5 spaces and we're only using 2 bits of tape, I'm positioning my tapes here. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue stick on the top, pop the tape on, and I'm going to do the same here. And turn it over and repeat on the other side. So we're going to pull them a bit taut as we stick them down. And so I'm just holding the folds as I do that to give the shortest route. Or I could do a bit more glue on there. I've been using PVA glue for my more Western style books, which I think might be a little bit more suitable for the task if you're doing like lots of books, but only for the occasional sort of hobbyist making a quick notebook. Glue stick's fine. Okay, so that's that bit done. The text blocks are now ready. So the next stage is to do the exterior binding. So I'm just going to consult my pictures and thread a needle, and we'll get sewing. Okay, so I've got the book put together all in all. This is the back cover of my book. So we're going to be starting with the second hole along from the right. And we're just going to start in the middle of the book. So I'm going to move the bulldog clip so that it's clipping together the bottom 2 groups of pages and the back cover, so at least they stay fairly well aligned. And then I'm going to hold on to the front sections. So if I just unclip that there and find the middle of my book, and then I'm going to reclip that there. So hopefully that back half of the book will stay nicely aligned. And I'm going to open it up, bring my needle through this second hole, out the front, and pull it through till I get a little bit of resistance from my knot. Then I'm going to close it up. Hopefully everything's going to line up in place as well as can be. And just pop that bulldog clip back on to hold it in place. Okay, so I can see my holes are mostly lining up. So let's loosen that a little bit and give it a bit of a tap. Make sure everything's in place. It's one of those things that with practice is just going to get easier and easier. Okay, so I think my holes are mostly where they need to be. There might be a little bit of feel around to get things through, but that's okay. So we're going to go around the spine and through the same hole from underneath. This will also help to line things up. Now I can see one of my groups of pages is slightly out, so let's knock that on the spine. It's looking a little better. And up we go. There we go. I'm going to pull that through and pull it taut. Okay, that's the most awkward bit done. Just getting that first stitch in. A little bit of a tear on the paper there, but I'm not too worried about that because, you know, learning process. So the next step is we're going to go over one hole to the left, and we're going to go down through the groups of pages underneath to come out the bottom. I've kept my holes relatively small, which is one of the benefits of the Japanese spiral hole punch, but it does mean it can be a little bit trickier to get through than if the hole was, say, larger compared to the needle and the thread, because you're going to be going through each of the holes multiple times. So we've gone one hole to the left, we're going to come back around the spine and back down the same hole. It helps if I pull the needle and not just the thread. Just going to make sure that that is pretty straight. And on the front side we're going to go over one to the left again, come back through to the back, and then round the spine again. Make sure it's nice and straight, give it a little tug. The next stitch we're going to do goes around the top edge of the book. So it's going to go this way and up. Now we're going to fill in this gap here, so we're going to go back down through this hole. And if we just have a little look at the front of the book, you can see we've got a gap here, so we're going to go across there and back up through the hole we started with, which has obviously got a knot in there as well. There's a little bit of an effort required to get through there. And then we're going to go over to this far right hole. Around the spine. And the end of the book and back through that hole. And we've got one last bit to fill in on here. So back up through that first hole with the knot in. So the back and the front of the book, the binding should look the same. I probably should have done the top and bottom holes a little bit closer to the ends, but it's fine, it's functional. So I'm just going to take my needle underneath this thread and back through the loop to tie a little knot. I'm going to do that twice just because I want to be sure. And this isn't in the instructions. The book tells you to cut off the end and put a little bit of glue on it and sort of bash it down to keep it flat. The kit just tells you to tie a knot and cut it off. I'm going to send my needle back through this hole one last time, just to bury the end of the thread inside the book. So it's getting quite tough to get through that hole now. There we go. So I'm going to cut that off as flush as I can get it to the book without catching any of the other threads. There we have 2 stab stitch, Japanese stab stitch style A6 notebooks. And the last thing that I'm going to do is just grab the ruler. This is not in the instructions, it's not in the book, it's not in the kit, but I have seen it elsewhere. I'm just going to hold the ruler along the spine, take one of my bone folders and just score a crease, a fold line to help with the opening of the book. I mean, I could probably have done that a little bit closer to the stitching, so we'll try and get it a little bit closer on this one. So just a firm press with the bone folder so that it opens nicely. So there we go. 2 books, same front and back in terms of the stitching, and ready to be used. Okay, so there we have it, some stab stitch bookbinding. Not quite sure what I'm going to use these little books for, but it's a nice portable size actually. They'd be good to sort of sling in a handbag rather than the A5 ones if you've only got a small bag like me, or in a project bag perhaps, project notes possibly. Yeah, cute little books. And as I say, I've got enough of the cover papers left over and the tape and the thread to do a few more, so that's handy. A good number of needles in the kit. There were 4 needles in the kit, and obviously you only need 1. Having the 2 bone folders is good because they feel a little bit different. I do have a bone folder upstairs from another bookbinding haul, so that's useful. I would say the instructions, they're clear, it's nice that they're photos, but what they don't give you is measurements, which I think would be handy, for particularly for the placement of the stitch holes. I think that would be handy. It's nice that they're simplifying their packaging by having the 2 different styles of binding stitches on the front of the box, but that does make them quite small. I had to refer to my book to get bigger pictures, just to make sure I was doing the stitching in the right order, which is when I realised that I should maybe have done the head and foot holes slightly closer to the ends of the books. But you know, it is what it is. You can't fill a hole once you've made it. So yeah, so they're done. They're good to go. They're a nice size, as I say, and yeah, the tape should give them a little bit of reinforcement. It may not be entirely necessary to put the tape on, but it's a nice touch. Okay, so let me know what you think I should use these books for, what you'd use a book this size for. Fancy having a go at Japanese bookbinding yourself, or Japanese style bookbinding I should say. Yeah, I enjoy it. It's nice and simple and low cost because you can just use, printer paper, whatever you've got lying around. Most of us at crafters are going to have all the bits and pieces, pretty much. Possibly not the tape, but I mean you can use ribbon, and this style of binding you can manage it without. So a bit of versatility there. So yeah, so let me know if you want to give it a go. And thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. In the meantime, there's this one here that may be of interest to you, and I will see you soon. But until then, happy crafting and bye for now.